I always knew I wanted to have children. Even from a young age, I had my whole future mapped out. I would meet and fall for a handsome man, we'd get married and have 2 children, a boy first and then a girl. We'd settle down, in a big house on the edge of town. He would go out to work and I would stay home with our children, watching them grow into beautiful human beings who I would be so incredibly proud of. As a family, we'd be there for each other through the good times and the bad. My husband would be my best friend and my soulmate, my companion to grow old with. This dream of my future was simply perfect, but I now know that life doesn't always turn out the way you would like it to. My dream life started off well. I met my handsome man and we got married. We had our first child together, a boy we named Timothy, and we were happy. All this happened before my 25th birthday. But by my 30th birthday, my handsome man had cheated on me, walked out on us, and had filed for a divorce. Timothy, now he's older, he insists on me calling him Tim, had very few memories of his father, him having been only 5 when he left us. I found this incredibly sad, so tried my best to compensate. We made the best of the situation, and while it was a struggle at times, I managed to give my son everything he wanted and needed growing up. Being just the 2 of us, we enjoyed a strong bond, we looked out for each other and had a lot of fun along the way. Tim was a good kid, a little shy perhaps, but he wasn't short of friends. He loved to read and write, and was also quite artistic too. He liked sports, but watching rather than playing, and often he would disappear into his room for hours to listen to his music. By the summer of 2006, Tim was 15 and was growing up fast. He was never short of an offer to spend time with a friend, but despite this, he still made time for me too, even if it was just an hour or so each day when we shared an evening meal together. During the meal, he would tell me all about his day, and I would tell him all about mine. I loved our time together immensely. It was during one of these evening meals, a Friday evening to be precise, that our story begins. I had cooked his favorite meal, lemon chicken with rice, and as usual, he had finished every last mouthful. He had told me all about his day in school and made a point that he had no plans for the weekend, but as I was serving his favorite dessert, chocolate cake and ice cream, he made an unexpected announcement, one he had clearly been building up to throughout the meal. "I've been invited to a party next weekend. Abby from school, it's her birthday." "Which one's Abby? Have I met her before?" I replied as I wasn't entirely sure who she was. "You met her once, I think. Her parents are rich, she lives in the mansion on Hazelton Avenue." "Oh yes, I know the house." "I didn't know you were friends with her." "I am, kinda. Well, she's inviting me and some other people from school, so I'd really like to go." I thought back to when I was Tim's age. Being invited to the popular girl's birthday party was a big deal, especially for a boy. I had no intention of standing in his way. "Of course you can go." "Did you say next weekend?" "Yeah, it's next Saturday. It's a costume party." "A costume party?" Surprised, I looked up from my dessert and across the table towards my son. "Yeah, a costume party. You know, fancy dress. Everyone goes dressed as something or someone." I giggled. "Yes, I know what a costume party is." I then asked the inevitable question. "So what are you going to go as?" Tim went very quiet and started to blush ever so slightly. He delayed giving me his answer by a few seconds, choosing instead to finish his last spoonful of ice cream and then take an extra long sip of his drink. "Well?" Curious, I tried to hurry his response along. When it finally came, I almost fell off my chair with shock. "I want to go dressed as a girl now." It was my turn to go quiet and take time to respond. I didn't know what to say. Tim's answer had taken me totally by surprise. I wanted to ask him what had made him come up with that idea, but I also didn't want to embarrass him, as he had obviously struggled a little to tell me in the first place. So after taking an extra long sip of my own drink, I decided to play it cool instead. "Oh, okay. That sounds like fun." I smiled politely, before standing up from the dinner table and disappearing into the kitchen with the used dinner plates. I'm sure my reaction hadn't been the one Tim had expected or even hoped for, but I needed some time to think about it. He quietly left the table and went up to his bedroom, where he closed the door and put on his music. He remained there for the rest of the evening. We didn't speak of it again until the next day, by which point there had been plenty of time for me to get my head around the idea a little more. I had come to the decision to embrace it, rather than resist it. If my son wanted to dress as a girl for the day, that was his decision, and I would support him with it. If I was being honest with myself, at that point, having had several hours to get over the initial surprise and then to really think about what it might involve, the thought of helping him find an outfit to wear and perhaps being able to do his makeup for him was quite an intriguing one. I brought up the subject again after lunch, as we were drinking cups of tea together in the front room. "So have you thought about what you're going to wear to this party next week?" I asked as I took a sip of my warm tea. "No, not really," he muttered. "Well, you'll have to start thinking about it. You only have a week to get something sorted." "Yeah, I know. Were you wanting to borrow some of my clothes?" "I don't mind if you do." This was a sentence I never expected to ever say out loud to my son. Tim nodded and hid his face behind his mug as he took a couple of large sips. He was still obviously a little shy about talking about this. I was starting to wonder if he now regretted having told me. "Look, Tim. If this is what you want to do, then fine. There's no need to be embarrassed about it. I'm happy to help you with it, I really am. Yes, I was a bit surprised when you told me, but thinking about it last night, I think it's a fun idea. And the fact you're willing to do it in front of people you know at a party, well, I think that's amazing. But if you want me to help you, I need a little more in return. Okay?" I looked over to the couch on the other side of the room just in time to see his mood change. An uncontrollable grin quickly spread across Tim's face, replacing the shyness which had been there prior. I had given him the acceptance he had been looking for, and for the first time today he began to engage in my conversation. "Okay, thanks, Mum. I'd love some help with this." Standing up, he took the couple of steps over to where I was, sat down beside me and wrapped his arms around me for a few seconds. That was the acceptance I had been looking for. After sharing the emotional moment of the hug, and the 10 or so seconds of smiling at each other which followed, I was keen to carry on the discussion, to see how far Tim wanted to go with his idea, and how much help he needed from me. I was still curious to know what had given my son the thought of wanting to dress as a girl, but I was prepared to wait a little longer for that particular answer. For now, I was happy to have finally got him talking. "Okay, so if you are going to do this, I reckon you should do it as well as you possibly can, agreed?" "Agreed." Tim's reply was much more assertive than before. "So I was thinking for the party, we'll find you a nice dress to wear, something beautiful, a real head-turner. I'll teach you how to walk in heels, we'll do your makeup, sort out your hair, paint your nails, lots of accessories, you'll have a designer handbag on your arm, you can borrow my expensive perfume too." The more I spoke, the more excited I began to sound. I took a glance over to my son, who was still right next to me, and I could tell he was starting to share the same excitement. "Wow, that's a lot of stuff. I never knew there was so much to it." "That's only about half of it," I giggled. "There will be lots of preparation first, long soaks in the bath, a bit of shaving perhaps. And I haven't even mentioned underwear yet, we'll have to find you something suitable. I paused for a moment, allowing time for enormity of the challenge to sink in. You sure you want to go ahead with it still? Yes, definitely. Tim's reply was quick and convincing. I smiled. The clock was now ticking. I had exactly a week to turn my teenage son into a passable and beautiful teenage girl. We didn't have a moment more to waste. Follow me. Jumping up from my seat, I led the way out of the front room and to the stairs, pausing only briefly to ensure Tim was right behind me. Soon we were in my bedroom, which as usual was exceptionally clean and tidy. Sit down on the bed, I instructed as I closed the door behind us. It was rare for the both of us to be in my bedroom, not because I didn't like Tim going in there, he had just always been happy spending the majority of his time in his own room. Being a single woman of some 10 years, my room was exactly how I wanted it to be, no influences from anyone else, certainly not from any men. It was therefore a very feminine room, flowery wallpaper hanging from two of the walls, baby pink paint covering the other two, and a slightly darker shade of pink-colored carpet. One corner was dominated by a large fitted closet, predominantly white with just a touch of gold in the design. To one side was a large floor-length vintage mirror, to the other, a door into an ensuite bathroom. The bed was fittingly queen-sized, as opposed to king, and was covered in beautiful turquoise bedding, for plump pillows at the head. There was a large white chest of drawers in the far corner, and opposite, beside the bed, was my dressing table, complete with a generously sized mirror and cute black chair with a pink cushion. The room was bathed in sunlight as large windows dominated one wall, a large vase in the center proudly displaying a bunch of summery flowers. It was an incredibly cute room to spend time in. To start off, I thought you might like to try on some of my dresses, see how you feel in them. You can decide which ones you like and then we can start thinking about choosing one to wear to the party. But first, go into the bathroom and strip down to your underwear, put on one of my robes, there's a couple in there. You showered this already this morning, didn't you? Tim nodded as he passed me and headed over to the ensuite bathroom, closing the door behind him. A minute later he had returned, wearing my long silky pink bathrobe. I found it interesting he had chosen the pink one rather than the plain white one which was also been hanging up in there, but I had to admit, pink did look good on him. Okay, you just stand over there, I'll pick out your first dress. Tim was clearly a little nervous as he stood beside the bed in his robe. He didn't have to wait long though. As soon after opening my closet doors, I had chosen his first dress. Being a fashionable woman with a moderate shopping addiction, I had plenty of outfits to choose from, but I had already picked out a selection of dresses in my head. I had started thinking about it as soon as I found myself warming to the idea of Tim wanting to dress up, as I lay in bed the night before. Try this one. I carried the first dress over to where Tim was standing and held it in front of myself for a few moments, modeling it for him. It was a long purple dress, slightly more casual than formal, but it looked and felt rather smart. It had navy floral design to one side and towards the lower half of the skirt, and also on the hanger was a small navy cardigan to cover the shoulders. Okay, take your robe off and put your arms up in the air. Tim did as he was told and 20 seconds later, I had lifted the dress over his head and let it fall down into place. He instinctively gave his bum a little bit of a wiggle, and as he was doing so, I knelt down to give each side of the skirt a gentle tug and to smooth out a couple of creases. The cardigan was a perfect addition. Tim put it on with no hassle and outfit one was complete. It wasn't a perfect fit of course, he was missing my generous bust for one, but I was surprised how close in size we actually were. Okay, go take a look, tell me what you think. I watched as Tim made his way over to the large mirror, smiling at the first sight of his reflection. He still looked very much like a boy in a dress, but that was fine as we had hardly started. He did look cute though, and I could tell he was quickly starting to enjoy wearing the dress, even allowing himself a couple of half twirls. He didn't manage too many words as a reply, but his frequent giggles gave his feelings away. I couldn't help but giggle too. It was strange seeing my son standing at my mirror wearing one of my dresses, but now all I could think about was having him try some on more, and to ultimately see how convincing a girl he could really make by the time of the party. Standing behind him at the mirror, I put my hands on his shoulders and stared back at the reflection of the two of us. "Come on, let's try dress number 2. Tim went back to the spot in the room where he had first changed. Taking off the cardigan first, he then pulled the purple dress up over his head, carefully putting it back onto the hanger. While he was waiting for me, he slipped the pink robe back on and sat down on the corner of the bed. I had already chosen dress 2, but before I revealed it to him, I decided to add a little something extra to his outfit this time. From one of the drawers in the chest, I pulled out a plastic packet, still unopened. Taking out one of the 2 pairs of pristine white cotton briefs, I held them out for Tim to take. They were quite beautiful in their simplicity. A single white bow on the front gave them the feminine touch. "I think you should wear these. They're nothing fancy, but they're brand new. They'll go much better under the dresses than what you're currently wearing." Without replying, Tim took the underwear and, turning away from me for the required privacy, switched his old boy boxer shorts for these new briefs underneath his robe. After giving me the nod he was ready, I went back over to the closet to pick out the second dress. The second dress was a much shorter summer dress, predominantly yellow but with a generous amount of white as part of the design. It had short sleeves rather than straps, but the stretchiness of the material meant it was pretty much guaranteed to fit well and look good when worn. As with before, I held the dress in front of me for a few moments to model it, before helping Tim to put it on. The dress fastened at the back, so once Tim had carefully stepped into it, I slowly pulled it up around him and fastened the single white button. Once again he gave a little wiggle and the skirt fell neatly into place. Much more leg was on show this time, the dress only being thigh length, but it was a really cute dress, and once again, Tim looked great wearing it. "How do you feel in this one?" I asked as Tim stood admiring himself in the mirror. "It's a bit shorter to the last one. Dresses come in various lengths, sweetie." I giggled. "It wouldn't have been the same wearing this with your boxers. I think the change in underwear was a good idea, don't you?" "I agree." Tim smiled. "I think I prefer the purple one. This is nice though." "Well, I have plenty more if you'd like to try some more." "Sure, okay." Tim stayed at the mirror while I headed back to the closet for the next dress. Tim spent the next hour or so, trying on many more of my dresses and outfits. He wore my long black evening dress, my long red evening dress, and just to complete the set, my long green evening dress. He tried another summer dress, this time in pink, a very floaty white dress, a checkered blue and white day dress, and a smart black and gray knee-length shift dress. I introduced him to a couple of skirts, first a long red gypsy skirt worn with a frilly white blouse, before swapping for a smarter white blouse to complement his navy blue pencil skirt and matching blazer. It was at this point I introduced him to a pair of heels for the first time. They were too high for a beginner to walk very far in, but they certainly added to the businesswoman look he had created with the skirt suit. It also added a little more fun to proceedings. It was now late afternoon, but there was still one more dress I wanted Tim to try. I was also prepared to take things a little further this time too. "Okay, put your robe back on. I have one more dress for you to wear, but I want to do something else with you first." "What are you going to do?" Tim replied curiously. "Sit down at my dressing table. I want you to put some makeup on you." Most boys would have run away had their mother told them they were going to put some makeup on them, but after all that had preceded them this afternoon, Tim appeared quite keen to try it. I had formed an idea of what I was going to do for him on the day of the party, but for now, I just wanted to introduce him to a few things, so it was less of a shock to him when we did it again next week. I brought a second chair into the room and sat opposite him in front of my dressing table, him facing away from the mirror so he couldn't see his progress until I had finished. I pulled out a fancy-looking box from underneath the table, revealing my extensive makeup collection. I picked out the items I was wanting and was ready to begin. "Okay, take a deep breath and sit still." Tim did as he was told. I started by cleansing his face with a wipe and applied a little moisturizer. This was to be the start of his daily routine. Being a boy, he would overlook little details such as moisturizing, but if he was going to be a girl for the day next weekend, he needed to start looking after his skin right away. I began to apply some liquid foundation, covering the few signs of maleness he had, instantly giving him a softer color to his face. On top of that, I applied a little powder and then some blusher, which gave a wonderful glow to his cheeks. I already knew which dress he would be wearing next, so I picked an eyeshadow to match, baby blue. I then added some mascara to his lashes and a little eyeliner. I quickly plucked a few stray hairs from his brow. I made a note to self to do them properly later in the week, and he was just about done. "Hang on, I need to do your lips." Tim was desperate to see the mirror, but I had more to do. Picking out my favorite lipstick, a medium pink which would go with anything, I applied it generously to his lips before showing him how to blot them gently on a tissue. I couldn't help but smile when I looked at him, but I wanted to do something to his hair though, before the big reveal. While it was short, it was just long enough to work with. I was thinking Audrey Hepburn, when she went short. That's the image I had in my head anyway when I started running my fingers through it, clipping parts of it to one wide with various slides and a couple of colorful butterfly clips. I added a fabric hairband to his head and I was finished. For a first attempt, I was extremely satisfied. I had a few more ideas, but was happy to hold them back until next week. "Okay, now you can look." I took a step back and allowed him to see himself in the dressing table mirror for the first time. "Oh my God!" Tim began to giggle uncontrollably, and so did I. "Wow, Mum. I look so different." "You look amazing, honey." "And that's only me on a 6 out of 10, wait until next week, I'll do it properly." I gave a cheeky wink and took his hand, guiding him away from the dressing table and to the spot he had been changing during the afternoon. "Come on, you need to put on your final dress. You'll like this one." I went back to the closet and a few moments later, I returned with my final choice of dress for Tim to wear today. It was one of my favorite dresses, a beautiful Laura Ashley. Slightly vintage in style, it was a gorgeous mixture of baby blue, a darker blue and white in floral design, knee-length with slightly puffy sleeves in a combination of a button and a zipper fastening at the back. I rarely had such an occasion to wear this dress anymore, although I did have chance to wear it the previous summer at a family wedding. I of course had no idea back then that the next time it would be taken out of the closet to wear, it would be Tim trying it on and not me. "Wow, that's beautiful." Tim reacted as soon as he saw the dress. "You wore that to Aunt Lucy's wedding last year, didn't you?" "Yes, I did, Tim. How very observant of you." I was surprised he had remembered, but the fact he had brought a smile to my face. "You'll need a bit of help with this one, but first I need to get you something to go with it. Hang on." I gave Tim the dress, still on the hanger, to hold, and headed over to the chest of drawers again. Pulling out a pair of clean white socks, I handed them to him, taking the dress back to for a moment while he put them on. As plain white socks go, they were rather cute, the kind a little girl might be seen wearing, ultra soft with a little frill around the top. Socks on, it was now time for Tim to put the dress on too. Tim removed his robe one more time and I took the dress off the hanger. With his hair and makeup done, he looked rather beautiful even just standing there in his plain white briefs and socks. I gave him a smile and then lowered the dress for him to carefully step into. Slowly pulling it up over him, feeding his arms through the sleeves, I slowly zipped up the back of the dress and secured it with the single pearl button. I knew, given the fastening, Tim wouldn't be able to take the dress off without my help, not that he would want to take it off so soon, of course. Tim was already facing the mirror before I could say anything. The dress fitted really well, even without cleavage, and with him now wearing makeup, he really did look like a girl. He didn't say anything, all he could do was smile and giggle. But I wasn't quite finished. Shoes. I ran over to the closet one more time and pulled out the very same pair of shoes I had worn with the dress last summer, a dark navy court shoe with a medium heel. Squeeze your feet into these. I laid them out in front of him and with a little required effort, he was soon proudly wearing the shoes to match his dress. So, what do you think? This dress is beautiful, and so nice to wear. It's definitely my favorite. I couldn't help but smile as I watched my son wearing my favorite dress and shoes, twirling left and then right, allowing the skirt of his dress to fall gently into place each time. There was one more thing I wanted to do for him, one more addition to his outfit I thought he might enjoy. I went back to the chest of drawers and, kneeling down on the carpet, I pulled open the bottom drawer, the largest drawer, and I soon found what I was looking for. What's that? Tim looked over curiously as I closed the drawer and stood up again. This is your petticoat, I replied, with a playful smile. It was by no means a full petticoat, certainly not the type you see in pictures from the 1950s, but it had several delicate layers of material in perfect white. It was incredibly feminine, as any garment of this type would be. I gave Tim no time to think about it, as I was immediately beside him on my knees again, this time helping him step inside, pulling it up under his dress to his waist and then smoothing his skirt out once again. It will add a bit more volume to your skirt. Go ahead, have a twirl now, see what you think. I took a step back and admired my work. We had finished, Tim's outfit was complete. I couldn't help but smile as I watched him admire himself in front of the mirror, gently swaying his hips and occasionally allowing himself a full 360-degree twirl. Finally, he paused long enough to notice me watching him and turned to speak to me. His excitement was clear to see. The petticoat really does make a difference, doesn't it? Thanks for doing this, Mom. I look amazing. But how do you feel? I added. I feel amazing too. I took a couple of steps towards him and we embraced with a hug. Taking his hand in mine, I led him towards the bedroom door. Come on, let's go downstairs. Careful walking in those heels. Tim navigated the stairs perfectly, he was clearly a natural for wearing heels. Back in the front room, I stood back and took another long look at my son wearing my clothes, except he hardly looked like my son anymore. I decided to give him a little test. Sit down, Tim. I pointed to the couch behind him and watched as he plunked himself down, skirt puffing up around him. He had no idea what to do with his legs or where to put his hands. I couldn't help but laugh. So I took his hand, pulled him back up from the couch and prepared to give a demonstration. When you're wearing a dress or a skirt, particularly a fancy one like yours, you need to think before you sit down. There's a certain art to it. It's quite straightforward though, watch me. taking center stage at the couch. I paused a moment, smoothed my skirt at the back. I myself was wearing a rather long and flouncy skirt that day, and then carefully lowered myself down to the cushions of the couch, keeping my posture as I went. Holding on to one arm of the couch, I then crossed my legs, right over left, and then placed my hands in my lap, one on top of the other. You can cross your legs fully like this, but to really sit like a lady, you'd do it this way. Slowly uncrossing my legs, being careful not to show anything which shouldn't be shown, I returned both my feet to the floor, legs and knees together. Then I slowly crossed my legs again, this time at the ankles, right over left, tilting them slightly, leaving my hands in my lap once again. Your turn. I moved over on the couch, giving Tim room to sit down next to me. He had obviously been listening as he perfectly replicated what I had just done a few moments before, even standing up to try it again a second time for extra practice. You got it, well done. I jumped up and left the room to go to the kitchen. When I returned, Tim hadn't moved, still sat like a lady with ankles crossed and his hands in his lap. I smiled at him. If there had been a camera to hand, it would have made quite the picture. Neither of us were very hungry, but we had a light dinner anyway. We spent the evening together, Tim still dressed as a girl, although I did allow him to take his heels off after a while. We watched my favorite Marilyn Monroe film, Some Like It Hot. Tim had never seen it before, but instantly fell in love with Ms. Monroe, as had I the first time I had seen her. The theme of the film was also quite amusing to us, considering what had taken place today. But as the night drew to a close, we both realized it was time for the fun to come to an end, for now at least, so we went back upstairs and I helped him change out of his dress and showed him how to take his makeup off. It had been a lot of fun while it lasted, and of course we had next Saturday to look forward to, but for now at least, Tim went back to being my son. I was out of the house for most of the next day, so hardly saw Tim. He spent the majority of the day in his room playing video games, so he told me, and during the times we were together we didn't once mention the events of the day before, or make any further plans for the party. And once the weekend turned into Monday, Tim was back in school and I was back in work, albeit it on part-time hours which I had recently changed to. We had our evening meals together as usual, but when finished, Tim would disappear into his room to do his homework and I would be left wondering if he had started to get cold feet about dressing up again for the party. So on Wednesday evening I brought up the topic over dinner, to hopefully get things back on track. Are you still going to the party this Saturday, Tim? I rarely did subtle, so I thought it best to just ask him straight. Yeah, course, he replied quietly, trying to avoid any sort of eye contact with me. Are you sure? It's just we haven't really spoken about it since the weekend, and, well, I just thought you might be a bit more excited about it all after the fun you had trying on my dresses last time. You did enjoy doing that, didn't you? Tim looked up and this time did make eye contact with me. Mom, I enjoyed it immensely. It was amazing having you do all that for me, it really was. I guess I'm just a bit nervous about doing it in front of my friends. Have you told anyone you're going to be dressing as a girl? No, no one. Oh, I see. I gave my son a comforting smile across the table. Well, that's perfectly understandable. It's a really huge thing you're doing, stepping out in front of your school friends all dressed up. Going to that party in a silly costume would easy, but what you're wanting to do, it takes balls. I think you're really brave. Brave? Hell yeah. You might get a few childish comments, but only from those who know no better. You'll turn heads, I guarantee it. The girls will be jealous and the boys will be, well, jealous too probably. Jealous of all the attention you'll be getting, they'll wish they thought of your idea too. Tim finally returned my smile. Thanks, Mum, that really helped good. I know I came up with all these great ideas for you, but anything you're not comfortable with, just let me know and we can rein in a bit. This is your thing, not mine. Tim laughed a little to himself. What? I asked, wanting in on what he was thinking. You don't need to rein anything in, Mom. After last time, I'm kinda curious to see how much more like a girl you can make me look. Oh, I have a few things up my sleeve. I winked as I stood up from the table and cleared our plates away. I wasn't in work at all on Thursday, so I had time spared to go into the city and buy a few things for Tim to wear. I wanted to keep this a secret until Saturday, though, so made sure I was home well before the end of school, giving me chance to hide my purchases. Tim assured me he had been keeping up with his moisturizing routine, and later that night he slipped on a pair of heels again so he could practice for Saturday night. We spent Friday evening together, watching another Marilyn Monroe film, The 7-Year Itch. I noticed that Tim was more relaxed than he had been all week, and had begun to let himself slip into girl mode again. He commented on how beautiful Marilyn's dress was on more than one occasion. He also told me he was now really looking forward to what was planned for the next day, and that his nerves had mostly been replaced with excitement. The film was interrupted for a couple of minutes, however, when the house phone rang. Pausing the film, I left the room to take the call. Hello? I looked at the clock as I answered, wondering who would be calling me at this time of evening. Oh, hello, is that Mrs. Jenkins? It was a woman on the other end, and she spoke with a slightly posh accent. Yes, I'm Louisa Jenkins, I replied, curious to find out who I was speaking to. Hi there, I'm Victoria Weaver, Abby's mother. It took a few seconds for me to recall who Abby was. Tim hadn't mentioned her by name for almost a week, but I quickly remembered. Oh yes, Abby, Tim's friend. Yes, that's right. I'm sorry for calling you so late in the evening, but I had a big list of names to get through and you were towards the bottom. It's about Abby's party tomorrow. I'm afraid we've had to cancel it. It's so unfortunate her getting sick the week of her birthday, but half the family has it now, so it wouldn't be right to have the party at our house and risk infecting everyone. She's devastated, of course, but I guess it's just one of those things. Maybe we'll do something later in the year for her. My response took longer than it should, but I struggled to process in the information I had just heard. After everything Tim and I had been through in the past week, him first plucking up the courage to tell me about the party, the amazing afternoon we had last Saturday, the doubts which had then crept in, followed by nervousness, and then finally the excitement he had shown tonight, to not now go through with it all would be unthinkable. Oh dear, that's a shame. Thanks for letting me know. I'll pass the message on to Tim. I hope Abby feels better soon. I had no intention on engaging Abby's mother in any kind of small talk, so I hung up the phone and returned to the front room in our film. Who was that? Tim asked curiously as he pressed play on the remote. Oh, just someone from work, asking about shifts for next week. I rarely lied to my son, but I made an exception this time. I wasn't ready to let the dream die just yet. Saturday morning arrived and we both allowed ourselves a bit of a lie-in before getting up. I hadn't slept very well. I had been kept awake with feelings of guilt for not being truthful with Tim about the phone call. I knew he would find out eventually that the party had been cancelled, but I had decided to go ahead with my plan anyway, hoping that he would forgive me for it later. I had come up with an alternative idea for how we could both spend our evenings, so all was not lost. I gave nothing away over breakfast though, and after a quick trip out on my own to pick up a couple of extra things from town, it was soon mid-afternoon and Tim was keen to get started on his big transformation. Go have a nice soak in the bath, use lots of bubbles, was my first instruction. I have laid out a selection of soaps and shampoos, us them all. There's a razor there too, shave your legs, and your chest." I smiled as I watched Tim disappear into the bathroom and turn on the taps. His favorite pink robe was already in there hanging up, along with a selection of fluffy white towels. Once undressed, he wouldn't be wearing boys' clothing again for the rest of the day. "I'll see you in about an hour," I shouted as he closed the door. It was just over an hour later when Tim returned from the bathroom, wearing one of the fully white towels around his waist like a skirt, as well as the pink robe. He smelled amazing, so had obviously taken my advice about the soaps and the shampoo. "Sit down on the bed for a minute, I'll dry your hair. But first let me feel your legs. How was the shaving?" "Bit strange at first, but I quickly got the hang of it. They're so smooth now." Tim lifted up his robe and towel and revealed one of his freshly shaven, smooth, hairless legs. "Wow, they feel fantastic. Smoother than mine. You'll be shaving them regularly from now on, I bet." Tim neither confirmed nor denied this. Instead, he sat still on the bed while I dried his hair with my hairdryer. Other than making sure it was completely dry, I didn't do anything particular special with it, but I did insist he put on a pink fabric hairband to keep everything out of the way for when it came for him to have his makeup done. I then sent Tim back to the bathroom to moisturize, while I got out the first part of his outfit for the evening: underwear. By the time Tim had returned again, I had laid out each item of underwear I had selected for him on the bed. His face was a picture when he saw it all and realized it was all for him. Whilst on my shopping trip during the week, I had bought him a complete set of lingerie, a significant step up from the simple cotton briefs he had worn last week. Laid out in front of him were some beautiful black lace panties with a matching bra, a pair of sheer dark nude stockings, black suspender belt, and finally the centerpiece, a long black silk slip with two small delicate straps and intricate lace detail at the hem. "Put these on first, then you can lose the towel." I picked up the panties and handed them to him. He didn't say anything. He seemed to be in a mild state of shock, which I found quite cute. A few moments later, he had slipped on the panties under his robe and put the towel to one side. "Next it's these." I picked up one of the stockings and gave it to him to hold. "Let's put this on first though, I'll help you." I fastened the beautiful black suspender belt around Tim's waist and we were ready for the stockings. "Okay, slip your feet into each stocking and roll them slowly up your legs." Tim didn't need much help with this bit. As instructed, he carefully stepped into the first stocking and rolled it up to the top of his leg. I then helped out by fastening it to his belt. We repeated this again for the second leg and soon we were done. "How do they feel?" "Incredible. They're so soft." "Good, well there's no time to lose, next it's your bra." I went back to the bed and picked up the beautiful black bra I had chosen for him. Without saying anything, I turned him around so he was facing away from me and fed his arms through the straps, fastening it on the middle of the 3 clips. Adjusting the straps slightly, I turned him round to signal that we were done. "I don't get it though, why am I wearing a bra when I don't have anything to put in it?" Tim looked puzzled, but I wasn't finished. "How about these?" I knelt down beside the bed and pulled out 2 identical small boxes from underneath it. Placing them on the bed, I opened them one by one to reveal a pair of incredibly realistic fake breasts. I was assured that they are the best money can buy. "What do you think?" Tim was almost speechless and began to blush a little. It had obviously caught him by surprise. "Where did you get these from?" "Oh, I did some research and found a place. They're mostly sold to women who want a bit of a boost with their cleavage. And to men who want to do the same." I giggled. "Come on, give them a try." One by one I took each breast out of their boxes and handed them to Tim. It was a strange thing to observe, my son filling out his bra with lifelike silicone breasts. They were a fair size without being huge, and once he had got them into the correct position, and had given them a little squeeze and a jiggle, they really did look very realistic. I didn't give him too long to admire his reflection in the mirror though. Instead, I helped him into the silk slip, dropping it down over his head and chest, tucking it gently into place. The slip hugged his body perfectly, showing off his new feminine figure. The breasts made a huge difference. I couldn't wait to see how he looked in his dress later. Giving him back his robe to put on, as well as a pair of pink slippers to protect his stockings, we had reached the end of stage 1. Stage 2 began almost immediately when there was a knock at the front door. Right on time, I uttered as I checked my watch, leaving the bedroom to go answer. What's right on time? Tim asked, a little panic in his voice. Who's at the door? He didn't have long to wait to find out, as a minute later I had returned to the bedroom, joined by an attractive blonde woman carrying a large shoulder bag, a long thin cardboard box and a small fold-up wooden table, which she immediately unfolded and set up in the middle of the room. Tim, this is Natalie, I announced, closing the bedroom door behind us all. She's a good friend of mine and a professional beautician. When I told her your idea about dressing as a girl for the evening, she offered to come and do your hair, nails, and makeup for you. I turned to Natalie. Doesn't he look fantastic so far? Just wait until you see his dress. Time was getting on, so I was keen for Natalie to get started. Pulling up a couple of chairs to the fold-out table, she invited Tim to sit down opposite her and began to take a variety of nail varnishes and other products out of her bag. I left them to it for a few minutes, choosing to make myself a refreshing drink downstairs. When I returned, Tim's manicure was well underway and he was chatting to Natalie like they were old friends. So I didn't interrupt them. Instead, I sat at my dressing table and began to touch up my own makeup. Lou, come have a look, Natalie shouted from the other side of the room. When I got to the temporary nail studio, Tim was already wiggling his fingers to show off his new color. I also noticed that while I had been gone, Natalie had spent some time plucking and shaping his eyebrows. Wow, they look fantastic. They really did look amazing, much better than anything I could have achieved. They had been painted a classic shade of red, but with an extra top coat which gave them an amazing shine. I love what you've done with his eyebrows too, they're much better. What do you think, Tim? I love them. He blushed a little as he replied, as if it was something he shouldn't be admitting to. I didn't say anything, but I was immensely proud of him for going this far. I knew the best part was yet to come though. Next though, it was time for makeup. Natalie took care of this of course, so I sat back and observed from the relative distance of the bed. Natalie of course did a much better job of Tim's makeup than I had done last week. She was a professional after all. She used a variety of foundations, building up layers of beautiful color and tone. She did an amazing job with his eyes too. A thick black mascara gave him luscious long-looking lashes, and a dark eyeshadow and expertly applied eyeliner made his eyes look irresistible. Then it was on to his lips. Natalie chose a gorgeous red to match his nails. Having worn lipstick briefly last week, he knew what to do and blotted off the excess on a tissue. Natalie then sat Tim at my dressing table and stood behind him as he saw his completed makeup for the first time. He didn't say much more than wow, but given his uncontrollable urge to smile, he was clearly impressed with the work done so far. There was only one thing giving him away as a boy now, as opposed to the beautiful young woman he was fast becoming, and that was his hair. I had purposely not told Tim about my plan for his hair, but in talking to Natalie earlier in the week, she had made a suggestion I just couldn't turn down the opportunity to see. Still sat at the dressing table and facing the mirror, Natalie removed Tim's headband and ran her hands through his hair a few times. She then went to her bag and pulled out a wig cap, placing it loosely on Tim's head, before pulling it down tightly and tucking all his hair underneath. She had given the game away with what was about to come next, but I hadn't seen the wig yet, so was equally as curious as Tim now was. Natalie carried over the box she had brought with her and rested it on the bed. Opening the lid slowly, she revealed a beautiful brunette wig. It was long and dark, but with just a hint of redness in the color. She immediately picked it up and placed it onto Tim's head, adjusting its position until perfect and then securing it into place. It was just below shoulder length and was already curled a little at the tip. Using a wig brush, Natalie got rid of a couple of tangles which had formed whilst in the box, and Tim's new feminine look was complete. You never would have guessed it was a wig. I certainly couldn't tell the difference. It looked incredible. Tim looked incredible. It's one of my best wigs, this, Natalie announced as she took a step back to admire what she had done. She had one more idea, and returned to her bag, pulling out a beautiful flower hair clip which she slid into one side of Tim's new hair. It was the perfect finishing touch. What do you think, Tim? Wow, it's amazing. I love it. Tim stood up and faced us both. Now he had his hair and makeup completed, he no longer looked like a boy at all, he easily passed as an attractive young woman. He was still in his robe, so there was one final stage of dressing to complete, but I was amazed at how the transformation had gone so far. I'd love to stay and see the finished result, but I have to dash. I have another house call tonight. Natalie started to pack her things away. You have an amazing time tonight, won't you, Tim? Enjoy every second of it, you make a beautiful girl. Tim stood there blushing at the compliment, and I showed Natalie to the door. I promised to send her a picture of Tim wearing his dress, and thanked her for her help. We were now so close to the end, but I still had to break the news to Tim about the party. In all the excitement of the past few hours, I had almost forgotten that the party was not actually going ahead. Returning to the bedroom, it was time to reveal Tim's dress to him. I had kept this part a secret too. Rather than have him wear one of my own dresses, I had been out during the week and bought him his own, one I knew he would adore. I headed straight to my closet where it had been hanging and pulled it out, still in its protective plastic sheet. I held it in front of myself for a few moments, so he could get a proper look. I bought this for you to wear, I hope you like it. It's a designer label and is one of a kind. I thought you'd like to wear something extra special for your special night, rather than one of my dresses again. What do you think? Mom, it's beautiful. But you didn't have to do that, I would have been happy with one of yours. Yes, I did. I wanted to. Like I said before, if we're going to do this, let's do it properly. You should have your own dress. Come on, let's put it on. The dress was stunning. It was a long black ball gown, which hugged the body but flared out towards the bottom. There were several layers to the skirt, but rather than being black, the layers underneath were a beautiful red. This flash of color would be revealed playfully whenever the dress was in motion, through Tim walking or sitting down. It fastened up the back with an invisible zip, and two thick black straps merged to form a V at the front. A small silver brooch was already attached to bottom of one of the straps, adding a little sparkle. Tim removed his robe and left it on the bed. Still in his beautiful slip, he stepped towards me and held my hand as he carefully stepped into the dress. I pulled it up over him and slowly raised the zipper. It was a perfect fit. The body hugged his figure, the skirt flared out, and his chest was held firm. I didn't allow myself to admire for too long. He still needed his shoes. These two were brand new, they were black heels, and his size this time rather than mine. They had a medium heel and were covered in the most beautiful velvet fabric, making them look and feel even more special. This little extra height was just what he and the dress needed. Still not done, I disappeared for a few seconds, returning with a sparkling silver necklace and some matching clip-on silver earrings. To complete the set, and fastened a delicate silver bracelet around his wrist and took a step back. Finally, I went back to my dressing table and picked up my favorite perfume bottle, the one I only use myself on special occasions. Spraying one for myself to test, the fragrance was divine. I sprayed 3 or 4 more times, but this time for Tim, and finally we were finished. Tim turned to face the mirror, and I stood beside him, not quite believing what we had just done. I had well and truly turned my son into girl. It was at this point I began to wonder if I had taken things too far. Had it been Tim's dream to dress like a girl, or was I just fulfilling my own dream of having a daughter? The designer dress, the professional makeup, the expensive wig and underwear, all this for a friend's birthday party. The fact that the party was cancelled and I still went ahead with it all anyway. I began to feel quite guilty about it all again. But as I looked up and saw the beaming smile come from my son's face as he saw his new reflection in the mirror for the first time, I began to realize that he really had enjoyed the whole process as much as I had. I don't know what to say. Mom, I look amazing, I feel fabulous. This dress is just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and what Natalie did with my hair and makeup, I never thought it would be possible. I can't wait for everyone to see me at the party, they're going to be speechless. There was huge excitement in his voice, but as he turned to me, he could tell by the look on my face, I was not sharing in his excitement. What's wrong, Mom? I took a deep breath and took Tim's soft manicured hands in mine. Tim, there's something I need to tell you. I paused before continuing. First of all, you look incredible. If I didn't know you were my son, I'd have no idea you weren't a real girl. It's not just the clothes and the wig and the makeup, you pull the whole thing off so well, you really do. But I have a confession to make. There is no party, it's been cancelled. Abby's mother called me last night, Abby's sick. I wanted to tell you last night, but the thought of you missing out on everything I had planned for you today. I wanted you to experience it anyway, even without the party to go to. We've spent all week thinking about today, you seemed pretty set on being a girl for the day, and I didn't want you to miss out on that. I'm so sorry I lied, I hope you'll forgive me. Tim went quiet for a moment and his smile briefly left his face. My heart beat a little faster as I waited for his response. I feared the worst, but when his response finally came I realized I needn't have worried. Of course I forgive you. Mom, today has been awesome, the whole week has been awesome. The fact you have been willing to help me like this? I can't begin to tell you how much fun I've had. Dressing up last week, watching those films with you, everything which has happened today, it's been like a dream, the most wonderful dream. Can I be perfectly honest with you? I nodded my head. I've been wanting to do this for ages, I guess some part of me has always been really curious to know what it's like to be a girl. I was just too shy in telling you, I didn't know how you would react. But then when I got invited to the party, it seemed like a good opportunity to finally go ahead with it, with an excuse to hide behind. But even then I never imagined you'd take to it so well, be so supportive of me. I thought if I was lucky you'd find me an old dress to wear, but here I am wearing this gorgeous designer evening dress, professional makeup and all the accessories I could imagine. You've made me feel like a princess, and I think that's how I always wanted to feel, just for a day, just to see what it was like. I had tears in my eyes as I leaned in and gave him a big hug. I was so proud of him for opening up like that. I had wished he had done it sooner, of course, but it all began to make sense now, why he had been so willing and comfortable in taking things as far as we had. I no longer felt guilty, even if I had been partly fulfilling my own dream today, of having a daughter for a day. I now knew we shared the same dream after all. I still had one more surprise for him, so taking him by the hand, I led him back over to the bed and sat him down next to me. I felt so underdressed in my casual denim skirt and white blouse, next to him in his stunning evening dress, but if he accepted my offer, I would soon be getting dressed up too. It would be a big step for him to take, but I was sure he was ready. So when I found out the party was canceled, I tried to think of something else you could do tonight, something we could do together. And then I thought, I've always been promising to take you to the theater, but I never have. So I called the box office this morning, and I got us a couple of tickets for Hairspray. You'll love it, I've heard fantastic reviews, and tonight is the gala performance. It'll be the perfect girls' night out. What do you say? Tim sounded a little unsure in his response. You want me to go to the theater with you, dressed as a girl? No, Tim, I want you to go to the theater with me, as my daughter. A large uncontrollable smile then spread quickly across Tim's face. Yes, of course. I'd love to, he giggled, and so did I, leaning over to hug him once again. But I will need to stop calling you Tim for a while. What shall I call you instead? Tim thought to himself for a few seconds before replying, how about Marilyn? Yes, I love it. Marilyn it is. I jumped up from the bed and headed over to the dressing table. Right, we have about half an hour before we need to leave. I've arranged for a taxi to pick us up. How about you choose me a nice dress to wear while I finish doing my hair and makeup? I smiled as Marilyn headed over to my closet and began to root through my dresses looking for one for me to wear. There were several dresses in there which I hadn't shown Tim last week in the hope that one day he would want to have a second dressing up session with me. Now Marilyn was born, I was pretty sure we would return to the closet again for that dressing up session sometime soon. While he was in my closet, I wondered if Marilyn would spot my wedding dress hanging there. Of course she would, it was huge and white. But that was for another day perhaps, I smiled to myself. Marilyn picked out my long green evening dress for me to wear that night. It was the same green dress Tim had worn briefly last weekend, one of his favorites from that day. After I had chosen shoes, finished my hair and makeup, and added a bit of sparkle, I didn't look half bad myself. I found my two favorite clutch bags, and gave one to Marilyn, filling it with a compact mirror, a few bits of makeup and some money. Soon the taxi pulled up, and after a final stop at the mirror to admire mother and daughter all dressed up for their night out, we left the house and got into the taxi. We had the most wonderful evening. Hairspray was brilliant, it was funny, sweet and charming in equal measures. Marilyn was a little nervous at first, being out in public for the first time, which was perfectly understandable, but she had nothing to worry about. To everyone who saw her, she was an attractive young woman, enjoying a show with her mother. Every so often I glanced over to her, saw her smiling, giggling and singing along to the show, and I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. During the interval we were at the bar and inevitably we bumped into someone I knew, Sarah, a woman I had worked with up until a few months ago, and her husband John. We exchanged pleasantries and reviews of the first half of the show, and then Sarah, who had met him on a number of occasions, queried where Tim was tonight. "Oh, Tim isn't here tonight," I replied. "But this is Marilyn, she's taken Tim's place for the evening." Sarah and John both shook Marilyn by the hand, the former commenting on how beautiful she looked. Marilyn blushed a little and tried her best to hide behind the glass she was holding, but she needn't have worried. There was no way Sarah or John were going to suspect who she really was, not from this brief exchange anyway. After the show we were in no hurry to get home, so instead of taking a taxi, we walked back slowly through the park, stopping on every second or third bench to chat and watch the world go by. Tim was so comfortable being a girl, and I was equally as comfortable having a daughter in place of my son. Neither of us wanted this night to end, but eventually it did. When we got home, we both decided we were too tired to stay up any longer, so went to bed. It had been a wonderful day, one neither of us would ever forget. In the morning, though, I would have my son back. The next day was slightly strange. We both commented on how much fun the previous day had been, but as much as I wanted to suggest he dressed up again and carry on as Marilyn for another 24 hours, I knew it wasn't the best idea. I had to move on. After helping him remove the varnish from his nails, all visible remains of Marilyn had gone, only the memories remained. I persuaded him to keep his dress and other clothes in his closet just in case, but within an hour or so, he was back to his old self, playing computer games and listening to music on his own in his bedroom. As I sat by myself on the couch, drinking tea and watching Sunday television, I thought back to my dream from when I was young. Get married, settle down and have 2 children, a boy and then a girl. Okay, my marriage hadn't worked out in the end, but I was quite settled in my life now. Things were comfortable and I was happy. I had always been immensely proud of my son, no more so than this past week, but it then dawned on me that it had been Tim who had given me the final part of my dream, not my ex-husband, nor any other man I had been involved with throughout my life. Tim had become the daughter I had never had, even if only for a day. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but I knew that whatever did happen, Marilyn would always hold a special place in my heart. She had been my daughter for a day.